Popularity that's hurting, healthcare reform and life support. President Obama seems to be in a bit of a rut right now, so how high are the stakes tonight for his State of the Union address? And if you're the president's speechwriter, where the heck do you even begin? Live from New York, Michael Cohen, former speechwriter for Bill Richardson and Chris Dodd, and author of the book Live from the Campaign Trail. And from Washington, Matt Latimer, former speechwriter for President George W. Bush and author of Speechless: Tales of a White House Survivor. Matthew, let's start with you. Or Matthew or Matt, what do you prefer?
Hey, either one.
Okay, I'll call you ML.
Okay.
If you're writing the speech tonight, where would you even begin? How would you kick it off?
Well, I think that President Obama needs to remember why he got elected, which was he was running against both the establishment of the Republican Party and the establishment of the Democratic Party, which was represented by Secretary Clinton. And what I think he needs to do is kind of recapture the magic that he had when he was running for president as somebody who's kind of running against Washington and the system. And the way I do that is just sort of acknowledging the problems that the country's facing, acknowledging in a way that, he hasn't quite lived up to the expectations people had for him, and then, pursue an agenda that's much more in keeping with the campaign that he ran.
Michael, what about you? How would you devise that first line, that first thought, knowing what you know about the pulse of the country right now?
I mean, I think, Obama needs to sort of channel his inner Bill Clinton and feel America's pain. I think there's been a real disconnect between what he's been trying to accomplish in Washington and the pain people are feeling out in the country. So I think any way possible that he can sort of make the connection between the stimulus package, between healthcare reform, between all the different measures he's pushing and how it's going to affect Americans on a day-to-day basis. I think making that connection, that showing the empathy that he needs to show, I think would be really important.
People connect with transparency, with humor, with look, this is how it is, and sometimes even taking a shot at yourself. How do you find that balance, Matt, of sort of being serious and also being humorous, and maybe even taking a couple stabs at yourself?
Yeah, I think it's very important for the president to do that. He sometimes has an image of being sort of a law school professor who doesn't really show a lot of emotion, and he does have emotion, I know that, and I think it's very helpful to be self-deprecating, and I think you do that early on in the speech. You maybe make some sort of joke about, I talked about change and I need to give you some more change of my own or something, but humor is very important. People remember that. Humor is President Bush, when I wrote for him, used to love to make fun of himself, and people seem to respond to that very well.
You bring up a good point. Michael, how much do presidents really put into their speeches? How much do they write their speeches? I mean, I can think of Abe Lincoln, right? He wrote Gettysburg Address on a train, but since then, I mean, do presidents really write these, or do you guys hold the power?
Well, I think every president's different. They have their own style. I mean, I think Obama is unique in the sense that he's a writer. He's written 2 books, so he knows how to write pretty well. And I imagine a lot of what will go into tonight's speech will come from his pen. But, State of the Unions are kind of weird speeches because they're a lot more prose than poetry, and they're a lot more sort of laundry list of policy items than they are necessarily sort of, rhetorical flights of fancy. So I imagine that you'll see sort of more of a sort of a workman's-like type of address than to see sort of kind of speeches we associate with him during the campaign.
So I want to ask both of you this, Matthew and Michael. Matthew, let's start with you. How do you even become a speechwriter? I was reading that you said that you were basically a political geek with a slightly mortified liberal parents because you wanted to work for a conservative president.
That's right.
I mean, you can't take speechwriting 101 in college. How did it happen for you?
Well, sometimes it happens just on the luck of the draw, and I kind of moved up the ranks. I worked on Capitol Hill, and then I went to the Pentagon and worked as a speechwriter for the Secretary of Defense, and then I kind of just got lucky and went to the White House. But, there's a lot of wonderful writers who never make it, and there are a lot of writers who do make it who aren't that wonderful.
And Michael, I love your quote. Well, Keurig, I quote, fell back asswards into this career.
Yeah, that's kind of how it worked for me, and frankly, that's how I think this happens for most speechwriters. They can't find anything else to do, so they say, hey, can you write a speech? Sure, I'll do that, and there you go, you got a job.
And you know what? You guys are being far too humble because both of you are incredible writers. Matthew Latimer and Michael Cohen, thanks, guys. Look forward to seeing what you think of the speech, too, after tonight. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right.
Thanks a lot.